I got a new Shure mic. It's close. I don't know what else I could do.
All right. Well, we are live here for another exciting episode of Jackman Radio, and I am so psyched tonight to have the host of, I was saying to him before we were rolling, of a show that is just, I don't miss it. Whenever there's a new one, I get the notification and I freak out like front row at Ed Sullivan and the Beatles. It's Mr. Mark Groubert. He's the host of America's Untold Stories with his co-host Eric Hunley. Mark, I'm so psyched and honored to have you tonight. Thanks for joining us on Jackman Radio.
Are you kidding? I have no idea where I am. This is the most exciting night of my life.
Now,
it's just nice to be back in men's clothing again. That's all I can tell you. It was a rough weekend, boys.
You just came from the J. Edgar Hoover building with Cash Patel, where they found a new blue dress, and it wasn't funny. Monica's, it was J. Edgar's, right?
Wow, that's funny. I mean, it's just the greatest story of all time. Who knows what Cash Patel's going to do when he gets in there? He's got 10 years to look around. He's got to find something.
So I connected.
How's your father, by the way? You, Jackman. How's your dad doing?
That's our uncle.
Yeah, it is an uncle? Or?
That's our Australian uncle with the six-pack who may or may not have done gay things with
right.
Singer.
Wow. Okay.
Singer's.
I think Singer's still in limbo. I'm in Hollywood, California, by the way, for the people who are watching. 75 degrees today, sunny, pedophilia everywhere. Everyone's out of control. The spring weather came early, and so did the people who were ejaculating at that time.
David Geffen was out on his yacht having
you have to go to the David Geffen building to get medical work done. You got to go to that guy. You look at the sign, you get terrified going in there.
Oh, well, I'm glad you're okay, and you're because I know it was a little hairy there with the fire. So I'm glad.
Woo! Let me tell you, I had to evacuate. I went down to San Clemente. I left for like a week and a half. I just said I'm out of here because of the smoke and stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, it was just pervasive. I mean, we did get evacuated, but I could have come back. And I said, you know what? Wait till they sort this shit out because of the smoke and the bad chemicals are in the air. I mean, everything goes up. Every plastic burns, some homeless people burn, the meth burns. It's all in the air at the same time. Everything burns.
Now, do you still have a place in New York, or are you just in California?
I don't. I gave it up. I kept it for a long time. Up until, I want to say, even 2012 or something. After 9/11, it got a little sketchy. I kept the place. I was going back and forth. Maybe I kept it to 2013. I'm not really sure, but I was on the Upper West Side, and what I would do with the apartment was I would sublet it out to people and then come back. You know what I mean? Because I lived here. I went back and forth for years, and then my agent, when I was a screenwriter, working full time as a screenwriter, I had a William Morris agent, and there was a lot of activity. So you would come out. The way it's done is you come out from New York for a week. They book you 1 million gigs to meet people, and you'd go from one meeting to the next, and then go home. So you kind of jam it in. It's a weird way of doing business, but a lot of people who are in the Hollywood business and live in New York do it that way. So eventually I had a place here and I had a place there. I was going back and forth like a lunatic, and I just said, fuck it. So I would rent out this place to various people, and I rented it out to some preppy guy. He must have been in his 20s who was going to NYU to Tisch School of the Arts or something. And he filled out the lease. I have people pay in advance, and then a huge security deposit because who the hell knows who these people are. So I come back. I think he rented it for the summer, so it must have been like May to about Labor Day or something. I come back Labor Day, and I find 4-foot holes behind a couch. It was covered up. It was 4-foot circular holes, like they were trying to escape,
Shawshank.
Like Shawshank, like they covered it up with a poster of Lady Gaga or something. So I moved it. I go, what the fuck is going on here? There's a hollow wall back there. Then I had a leather easy chair. There's another hole. Then hole after hole after hole. And I take out the lease and I look at it. And on the lease, it says Chris Sununu. And I go, who the fuck is Chris Sununu? And I don't know shit from Chanel. So I look him up, and apparently it's got something to do with Bush's ex-advisor, his dad, John Sununu, which is maybe why I rented him the place in the first place, because he had, credentials to get in there.
He had a pedigree.
He had a pedigree to get in there. The 1-bedroom apartment on the Upper West Side, furnished, is kind of gold, especially if you're looking for something for the summer. And he must have partied in there like it was 1999. But I don't think it was 1999. It was around that time. It's a quote Prince. And, I had to keep his deposit, and I wrote him a nasty letter. I'm not really sure what the end result of this thing. But now I hear that he was a governor or something in your state, or whatever happened to this guy.
I think, Mark, you put him on trajectory to become our governor.
Now that he's the governor.
He just finished. What did he do, Mike? How many terms did Sununu do?
3 or 4?
Yeah, a very popular governor here.
Chris Sununu?
Yep, Chris Sununu, and his brother was.
All I could say is to people in New Hampshire, do not rent him an apartment. He might be a great governor, very, very sketchy tenant.
Governor Sununu, I'm gonna tag you in this clip. I'm gonna tag MUR. We're gonna want to get a comment from you. And this is coming from someone who voted for you and supports you.
That's right. These are from your supporters. You might be a great guy. Who knows? Maybe you were on the stuff all summer partying. It was New York. Look, I don't blame you. The point of the matter is you're a dangerous tenant.
Yeah, don't rent to him. Well, it's as Trump would say, it's all about accountability, Mark, and we're going to keep the governor accountable. Believe me,
we're going to hold him accountable. I got Doge coming up to North Conway as I speak with an armored truck to look into what the hell's going on up there. Because I don't know, was his brother never Trumper, or what was his brother's take? He seemed to be all over the map with Trump.
They went back and forth. Yeah. Sununu went back and forth, and actually we went to a Trump rally a few years ago, and Eric was dressed as Donald Trump, and he actually went up to Governor Sununu and said, I want to get a ride in the Beast, okay, to the airport. He's like, I can barely get a ride in the Beast.
That's funny. That's funny.
There's a photo somewhere.
I think it was Roger Stone who earlier on brought Trump up to New Hampshire, one of the right, if I remember correctly.
I think 1988, he brought him to Portsmouth.
He brought him up there. Yeah,
he came up here. It was a sensation at that point.
It was, right? It was a big deal.
Yeah. Before we lived up here.
In 1968, of course, Eugene McCarthy coming close to knocking off the sitting president of the United States, Lyndon Baines Johnson, in the primary up there, which many people believe that tipped the hand of LBJ to get out of the race. And
was that the Clean for Gene people?
The Clean for Gene people who were not happy with the Clean RFK people who came in March of 1968 and were not happy to have more anti-war politicians, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, well, RFK was up here too. One of my friends who lives kind of in your neck of the woods, who toured with Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys, lived in Keene, New Hampshire. He actually shook RFK's hand in 1968 in Keene, New Hampshire, at Keene State, my alma mater.
Wow. I know some people went to Keene. I remember that. I went to Bard College, which was one of the Seven Sisters. There was Hampshire that was up there. That was one of the Seven Sisters. Franconia was one of the Seven Sisters. Vassar was another one. I forget the other 7 colleges. Crazy liberal arts schools, outnumbered 3-1 by girls. You had sex the first night you got into the school. First night you checked in. Yeah, it was unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
So it was real life National Lampoons, basically.
Yeah, I wasn't at Lampoon until 10 years later after I got out. But one of my classmates at Bard College was Maddie Simmons' son, Michael Simmons. So when we became editors at Lampoon, it was because of my relationship with Michael, really. But I had skills, but there was a Friday night massacre where his father fired everyone, including PJ O'Rourke and others who were there, and cleaned house. And I think that was in 84, 85. I came on in 85 as an editor at Lampoon.
PJ O'Rourke, Mark, ended up here in our neck of the woods in Dublin, New Hampshire.
That's right.
Sharon, New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Like literally the next town. We live in Peterborough, and that's where he spent the last part of his life.
Great writer. I mean, totally hysterical dude. I think he was fired right before I got there.
Yeah, we tried to interview him or do something with him, but Mike, he said to you he was basically retired right at that point.
So I was in touch with Tom Bodette, the Motel 6 guy. We'll leave the light on for you.
Leave the light on. I wonder who would win a fight, Bodette versus the pillow guy. Leave it, Motel 6 versus Lindell. Yeah.
Depends on how much meth are we talking?
I know. It's a tough bet, bro.
But no, Bodette, I had met in my travels, and I think he lives in Vermont, and I knew he was friends with PJ O'Rourke, and we were doing a live comedy show, and I said, "Hey man, can you invite PJ O'Rourke? I live the next town over from him." And he responded and said he appreciates the invite, but he's not doing that type of thing these days. And this was a couple years before he passed away.
Oh well, that makes sense. Makes sense. I mean, Bill Murray is still running around. He doesn't know where the hell he is. Some of the legendary Bill Murray stories on the Northeast where he would just show up at your backyard barbecue with no shoes on, without a car, and people go, "How the hell did Bill Murray get here?" He'll stay for 4 hours, get drunk, eat all your food, and then 2 girls in a convertible will come and pick him up and take him away.
Yeah, they'll come by and get him.
Yeah.
Yeah, our dear friend who passed away a couple years ago drove cab on Martha's Vineyard, and he picked Bill Murray up at the airport one night.
Yeah.
He just came in from either Chicago or Boston.
Yeah.
And he did a double take, then he saw the tags on his bag, and it said, B. Murray. And he knew, and he said didn't they just chat baseball, Mike?
He sat in the front seat, they chatted baseball, and he tipped him $100. So there you go. Yeah. Bill fucking Murray.
Yeah, Bill Murray, my friend was a writer at Letterman. He said the greatest day of his career was getting fired by Letterman, because the next day he worked for what's his name out here on the Tonight Show on NBC.
Leno?
Jay Leno, yeah. And he says the difference was night and day. But they had a week where he was supposed to host Bill Murray. And he came in, brought in cases of Jack Daniels, started drinking on Monday, supposed to host on Friday. Nothing happens for 5 days of writing. Shows up on Friday. He looks up in the air and he says, "Those fluorescent bulbs are bugging the hell out of me." Takes one out, starts smashing them all, takes a bottle of Jack and splits. And they never showed up for the show.
Oh my God!
Yeah, Bill Murray's legendary,
dude. That's
legendary psycho.
Can't get away with that stuff.
Catch his SNL 50th Weekend Update appearance.
I couldn't. I mean, it's just, what I'll recommend though, the SNL movie, Saturday night. It's really good. You saw it?
Yeah,
it's really good, bro. I really enjoyed it. I had low expectations, but
I did too.
Yeah, really well done.
Reitman did it, right, Mike? Reitman's son?
Reitman's son, yeah.
He who did the new Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
So obviously, Mark, you're a pop culture guy. You're celebrities and satire and comedy, but what really got you into the Kennedy assassination? What was the...
Well, I mean, the generic was everybody I know growing up was into it. So, I mean, I was into it like anybody else, but a number of years ago, I think it was about 10 years ago, I hooked up with Oliver Stone, and he and I, mostly me, but him giving me notes. I wrote a 10-hour miniseries on Lee Harvey Oswald. It was 10 hours. It was 5 2-hour scripts. And Oliver and I worked on it for a year. And I think that was about 2012 or something, and 2013 maybe. So then we went around and did this Dog and Pony show in Hollywood with the project, which should have been a documentary by itself, because there were spooks coming out, CIA people coming out to see Oliver because he'd never done TV. So this was supposed to be a mini series on television. It was 10 hours long. We went to HBO, went to Netflix, Showtime, every outlet you could possibly go to, because it wasn't a feature film. And Oliver was willing to do this because of the subject matter. So he is such a harsh taskmaster that he drove me to dig deeper all the time about Oswald. And I did, because he was so brutally harsh. And I had to keep coming up with real factual stuff, because nobody knows more about the assassination than Stone does. He knows oddities that even I couldn't find in him. He knows stuff and has weird stories about people involved in the assassination that nobody does. And you can't go at him. He wants all facts all the time. And we debated over this one so-called CIA memo that was supposed to be from the Secret Service head Rowley to the head of the CIA. And it turned out it was a fraud. The memo itself was a fraud, but I didn't know it at the time. The so-called Rowley memo, which is pretty infamous at this point, about Oswald and how they knew about him and everything else in the memo. And I gave it to him, and I said, I don't know. And about 2 weeks later, he had vetted it and came back and said this thing's a phony. And I said, okay, but he still wouldn't. He went berserk over it. I said, all right, well, forget it, don't use it. But he is so harsh when stuff like that happens with facts that it makes you nervous that you're not getting the right facts. So we produced this thing as a document, as a 10-hour miniseries. We went around. It became a huge sensation in Hollywood, just the pitching of it, because when you go in to pitch something in Hollywood, I don't know if you guys know how this works, but usually go in, there's 2 executives and some guy who's taking notes, whatever it is. These pitches had 35, 45 people in them. Every executive at HBO and Oliver would merely introduce me, and then the pitches went on for 2 hours. I would do this pitch. I had to explain everything with photos, and it was a whole dog and pony show, photos and documents and stuff like that. So they had the legal department at HBO there, the vice president, the president, and then you went to Netflix, and this went on for a year, of just doing it. And it was, to be honest, it was a huge budget because it was a period piece and it was 10 hours and it was a miniseries. So, Netflix was nervous about the money. It may have been, $50 million for a TV miniseries, which is a lot of cabbage, to lay down for television.
Wow.
But it had the bonus of having Oliver as a producer. So it's a lot of cachet. So, we went around for a year doing this until it ran out of gas. We were going to go to Europe and pitch it to the French, but he kind of got busy with something else. So now on our locals platform, unstructured.locals.com, with the help of AI, Eric and I, my partner, Eric Huntley, have digitized it with AI, and it is insane. We've taken the 5 scripts and made an audio radio drama out of it, using the actual voices of the characters as close as we could get through AI, and myself as the narrator, and it's frightening how accurate. I don't even know it's not me. You know what I mean? If I read it into a microphone, it wouldn't be as good as the AI version of me. Now, granted, what Eric says is the more public tape there is of someone, the easier it is for AI to get accurate. And there's a lot of General Walker stuff out there. There's a lot of Cabell. There's a lot of Oswald, a lot of Ruby. So the voices sound impeccably accurate. And it's part of the membership. When you join Locals, you get it for free with the actual script. We give you each script for each episode, the original script that I wrote with Oliver. So you get the PDF, and then you get to follow along audio-wise to the thing done by AI.
Wow, I gotta check that out.
You gotta check it out. If you're into it, you'll love it.
That's
really
fascinating.
Love it. It's got music in it. It's got Foley. It's almost like War of the Worlds, like a radio drama with sound effects and everything else.
Wow. You got Oswald in the police station. I vehemently deny this, and I wish somebody would come forward. You have all.
It's all in there.
Did you ever get a chance to ask Oliver Stone about Arnon Milchan?
I don't know what to ask him about. I mean, Milchan is a huge figure here. I mean, he's produced a lot of movies. I mean, I mean, Milchan is a revered figure here in terms of Hollywood production. So,
and I say Oliver all the time, but that's just a thing that I hear from people who are the real, Israel angle of the assassination. They're always worried about Arnon Milchan blocking things from the film. So I didn't know what your thoughts were on that, or you had a view on it.
I really don't. I mean, there's enough meat on the bone for me not to go to the Middle East to get another conspiracy theory. I mean, the real place is Mexico City. I mean, that's where you've got David Atlee Phillips. That's where you got the framing of Oswald in September of 1963. You don't need to look at the Dimona nuclear plant. You could go down to the embassy. You could go down to the embassy and talk to Sylvia Duran and ask her why she was tortured by Mexico City intelligence officers at the direction of the CIA. To make her say that Oswald came into the embassy and also into the Soviet embassy, and Hoover himself tells LBJ the night of the assassination on the phone that this is a phony Oswald on the tape and on the phone, the tape of the phone, and there's a phony Oswald photo, and it's from September of 1963. So clearly they're framing him 2 months before the assassination, by that it collapses on its own weight.
Yeah.
There's a couple of schools of thought, Mark, on Oswald in Mexico City, and I'm curious where you fall. I kind of lean towards he may have attempted to take a bus down there, but there were also people impersonating him, but there's witnesses who talk about they saw someone on the bus they thought looked like him after the fact, and but like you said, those photos that emerged are like comical, like that stocky.
But why have the phony photos and the phony phone calls in September of 1963?
Right.
So, and that was submitted to, in other words, Hoover received those in September.
Yeah.
Right. So none of these other stories make sense. Plus, I mean, Oswald goes to the unemployment office in Austin. He's trying to meet with John Connolly. At the same time, they're saying that he is in Mexico City. There's FBI 302s of the unemployment office woman who's dealing with his unemployment insurance, and also his attempt to go see Connolly in Austin to straighten out his discharge from the Marines. So there's 2 302s. The FBI interviewed 2 different people at that time when he's supposed to be in Mexico City. So those exist. Those exist.
Do you think it's possible that it could have been Kerry Thornley and Bill Seymour that were impersonating him in Texas and New Orleans? And
right. The question is, who cares? The question is, who cares? It's meaningless. He's obviously being impersonated. It doesn't matter who's really doing it. He's being impersonated because we're doing an episode of Marguerite Oswald on Tuesday rather. This coming Tuesday, we're doing a big dive on his mother. So his mother writes a letter to J. Edgar Hoover in 1958 looking for her son. She goes in 1960-ish to the State Department, physically walks into the State Department in Washington, D.C., saying, I haven't heard from my son in 20 months. And within a week, she's getting letters from her son out of Minsk. So clearly they're in contact with him out of the State Department. And she physically walks in there. The woman had steel balls, and she was writing letters to Hoover. And Hoover says famously that there's doubles of Oswald running around in his letter. So we have a reference to doubles of Oswald from J. Edgar Hoover himself. The point of the matter is, I don't really care who was doing it because there was multiple people doing it. There's the purchase of the Jeeps in New Orleans. It was signed with a bill of lading, obviously, that it was Lee Harvey Oswald signing the bill to buy the Jeeps to be used in the second Bay of Pigs invasion. Involving Ferry and involving Bannister outside the office on Camp Street.
Right. Then there's whoever signed and picked up the leaflets.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's actually him. I mean, that's obviously, I think that's actually the real Lee Harvey Oswald. So people think that he made up Fair Play for Cuba. There were Fair Play for Cuba committees on every campus in America. Fair Play for Cuba was as common as the Students for a Democratic Society.
But his was a chapter of one.
His was a chapter of one. His was a phony chapter. And he wrote to the head commie in New York saying, I want to start this chapter. And they said, knock yourself out, which infiltrators did all the time. I'm sure there were phony SDS chapters.
Yeah. But just the fact that he happened to be on the second floor or first floor of the same building that Guy Bannister was in. Obviously, it's a different address, but I mean, it's only one story apart. So.
Yeah, I mean, if you buy the JFK book of the film, which I'd recommend for anybody moderately who knows the subject moderately or medium, Oliver has footnoted everything, and it's footnoted for a reason. It's footnoted because it had to be vetted by Warner Brothers. Anytime you submit a script for a movie, especially a biopic, it has to be vetted by the lawyers at the studio. So what Oliver did was he took the vetting, made them into the footnotes of the script. So when you buy the JFK book of the film, you will see actually the lawyer's notes because it's Oliver's explanation of the lawyers asking him, how do you know this? How do you know that? How do you know this? How do you know that? Because they won't let you just make up bullshit because somebody could be alive. Somebody could say something. So you have to respond. And I've done it before myself. You've got to respond as to where you got this from. And in this JFK book of the film, those are the footnotes you read in the actual script. And that's a fascinating read if you understand this genre.
Yeah, I definitely want to check that out. And I really enjoyed his, through the Looking Glass revisited there a couple years ago. I mean, that was quite.
Yeah, Destiny Betrayed, I think, is the 4-hour version. Jim DiEugenio wrote the script, and I've got a couple of long interviews with DiEugenio. We live near each other here in LA.
I love seeing his response when you do the Ruth Payne impression. Oh God, the rifle wasn't there. Me, oh my God, I got this typewriter.
It's funny. Like the last 2 living people are Marina Oswald and Ruth Payne.
Yeah.
And they may have had a bizarre relationship. They obviously had a relationship. I mean, Sheriff Decker seals or takes Ruth Payne's projector and her films from her little film area there. These are not home movies. These are professional films of the lesbian topic. They're soft porn lesbian films that are seized by Sheriff Decker and the Dallas police. And the first one they went to was Michael Payne. And he says, don't get me involved. I don't know anything about these films, because they were his wives. And she was so harsh about getting those films back. She was actually yelling at the Warren Commission. That and the love letters, to Marina Oswald.
Yeah, because she was really fixated on Marina. Because there's people who say, oh, she was watching Lee Harvey Oswald and she was his handler, and DeWarden passed Oswald off to her. But it's like, it seems like she was really more into Marina, and maybe Michael was tasked with looking after Lee because they went to political events together and lectures, and they talk politics all the time, according to Michael. And there's that clip of Michael Payne, like a day after the assassination. He's being interviewed, and it sounds really rehearsed. I don't know if you've ever seen that clip where he's.
I have. I mean, he's sketchy as fuck. I mean, he was taking Oswald to go to General Walker rallies and speeches, and then he went to the ACLU. He infiltrated the ACLU. He had index card filing systems on every leftist student in Dallas. I mean, these guys were working way before, they met Oswald, and she's working way after. I mean, she gets kicked out of El Salvador in the 80s, as being outed as a spook by the leftist protesters down there.
Right. I think that incident was connected to USAID, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's crazy.
Absolutely. And her taxes are still sealed, as are Oswald's, and hopefully maybe Doge can get into the IRS, into that tax area, because they didn't have any problem sending Trumps to the New York Times, and yet we still can't get Oswald's taxes nor Ruth Payne's.
Wow.
That's just a fact.
Right. Would we see, is it Riley Coffey?
No, I mean, you'll see, Riley Coffey, but you may see some government payments for unexplained things linking him to something. I mean, keep in mind, O&I comes in. I never thought he was CIA. I always believed he was O&I. O&I comes in to testify in 1977 for the House Assassinations Committee, and they ask him for the documents on Lee Harvey Oswald from their files. And the guy just smirks and says, "We destroyed them all." And he says, "When?" He goes, "Last night." And he just smirks and sits down from O&I. What are they destroying the night before the assassination committee? He was O&I. I don't believe he was CIA. I think CIA had files on him, but I think essentially as a Marine, he was part of the Office of Naval Intelligence. In fact, there's a lot of them through there. I mean, there's guys in the embassy in Moscow who are O&I.
Right, and O&I predated the CIA, right, significantly.
Predated. It's the oldest intelligence agency in the world.
Right,
I mean, I think it goes back to 1889.
Wow, and that seems to me like where the file and the information and the stats on Oswald, which went out over the Dallas police radios, that's probably where it came from, an O&I
Well,
source.
that or the 112 Military Intelligence Group out of San Antonio, because they had an intelligence file on him and they were on the phone pretty quickly. So one or the other.
How about the fellow who was at Dealey Plaza who took a photograph of the book depository, the bus, and was at the theater taking photos? Do you know the story behind that?
I think
guy?
you're talking about James Powell. Is that who you're talking to? About Powell?
I'm pretty sure it's Powell, Mike, right?
Yeah, Powell claimed it was his day off, but he was obviously assigned by the 112 to be there and do this. What he shot, I don't know. We never saw it. There's, a number of things were seized. The point of the matter is, I mean, it's a circus there. There's so many weird people at this thing. I mean, everybody's there. You know?
Do you think Lauren Hall was there, Mark?
Somebody asked me about Lauren Hall yesterday. I mean, Lauren Hall essentially was a gun runner, and he was arrested, as I guess in Dallas that day, and he had a trunk load of guns. I don't think you go to an assassination with a trunk load of guns. Call me crazy. It sounds like a smaller operation. I know he was involved in gun running to Cuba. Yeah. And I think that's what his main thrust was.
Yeah, because some researchers clump him together with Bill Seymour and Lawrence Howard.
They were all soldiers of fortune who ran guns to Cuba. I don't think that's disputable. Unless you get deep into the weeds of the history, it all looks conspiratorially bad to you. But once you dig down into the Bay of Pigs and their attempt at a second Bay of Pigs and gun running, including Jack Ruby, by the way, as you're well aware, everybody thinks everybody's in on something. That's not necessarily true.
Yeah. And do you think that was Milter in Dealey Plaza, Joseph Milter?
It's hard to tell. I go both ways on that thing. I even if he's there, like, why would you go there? I mean,
that would be ballsy after.
Right. I know.
He didn't think that the dude. Well, he didn't know he was being taped there in Miami.
Right.
Somerset recording.
It's such a high public event. I mean, look at Billy Lovelady. I mean, is he thinking that he's Oswald? No, he works there. So he's out on the steps, and even Oswald's mother thought it was her son at first. When she first saw the photo.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder about that too. I mean, just the fact that Militera, correct me if I'm wrong, nothing about him is in the Warren Commission.
I think there is something in there. I'd
Is
have to
there?
look.
Okay.
I thought maybe
I mean,
it might be the House Assassination Committee.
The FBI, when they interviewed him after the assassination, they didn't even ask him about what he said about what might happen to Kennedy. What's going to happen with a rifle in a high rise? They didn't even ask him about it.
Yeah. Well, if you look at Crawford, I mean, Crawford is a key lynch to this entire thing, in my humble opinion, because I think Crawford was a male prostitute. He was with Jack Ruby, came out of Hollywood, went down to Dallas, takes a job with him at that trying to sell those twister boards for Jack Ruby. But he is a male hustler and living in Ruby's apartment. And you could walk from Ruby's apartment to the Tippit murder scene in like 5 minutes. If you walk it off, you could get there in a second. And then Crawford flees the next day. And when he's brought back from either Montana or the neighboring state, Wisconsin, where he's in a cabin, some family cabin, he's brought back to Dallas. And he tells the police, I didn't want this. He tells this to the Warren Commission. If you read Crawford's testimony in the Warren Commission, he says, I didn't want them to pin this on me. And they're kind of shocked, going like, what, the Kennedy assassination? They're going to pin it on you, bro? And then he realized he said too much. And what he meant was the Tippit killing. It was the Tippit killing that he fled, because him and Ruby were involved in rubbing out Tippit, and that apartment of Ruby's was right there. Wow. And I don't know if I assume it was part of the frame of Oswald that Tippit would be killed and Patton. But if you look at how close Ruby's apartment was to that, and that Crawford was staying there, along with George Senator, who was another homosexual, you've got this same situation that Garrison discovered in New Orleans, this homosexual little cabals that were operating and being used by the deep state.
Gay John Richards.
Yeah. It's outrageous.
Yeah.
Right, David Ferry. I've heard some people throw Jack Valenti's name out there, being involved. What do you think about that, Mark?
Jack Valenti was a human footstool. He would, I'm not kidding. He used him at times as a human footstool.
LBJ did, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. He would get him down on all fours, and then he'd put his feet up on his back, and he'd read documents and talk to Valenti while Valenti was his footstool.
Jesus.
He then bangs Valenti's wife, has a child out of wedlock, and dotes on the child in the Oval Office, and she grows up to run Warner Brothers Pictures. Valenti's daughter is still a gatekeeper at Warner Brothers.
Wow, that's wild. I mean, Valenti was a powerful man after the Johnson administration, given that post for the MPAA, right?
Right, and his daughter later worked at Warner Brothers up until now. I don't know if she has a producing deal now, but she was senior executive vice president. We got a little
comment here. Valenti gave Oliver Stone's JFK a lot of bad press.
Absolutely. I mean, he went to war over that, and Oliver took it personally because it was so crazy, because it was a studio picture. And he's representing the studios as a lobbyist. It made absolutely no sense.
Do you think did he show Valenti Jumbo?
Oh, he definitely saw Jumbo a number of times. I think he was completely spooked by Jumbo.
He tattooed him with Jumbo.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of people who saw Jumbo. Let me put it that way.
He was like the Milton Berle at the White House.
The most recent one that I could is John Dickerson has a new book out. He's now the anchorman at CBS Evening News. John Dickerson. His mother, Nancy Dickerson, was the first woman news anchor for CBS and in the United States. And she, right here in LA, she went down to the hotel in 1960 after the primary. And after Kennedy had won the nomination and had sex allegedly with LBJ, and he opens up the book. John Dickerson has a book about his mother out that I'm reading right now. He opens up the book with himself at the LBJ library, and his mother is on the phone on the audio tapes with LBJ, and she's saying cutely, "Did you want me to try on buy me another bathing suit?" And bathing suit was the code word for taking Jumbo out into the night and using Jumbo. He would actually buy them bathing suits and have them try them on in front of him. Was his little peccadillo.
He didn't. Johnson passed away by 1973?
Yeah.
So he seemed to be a pretty broken and pretty disheveled at that point. Do you think it really is because of the knowledge after the fact of the cover up?
No, it was alcohol. Dude, he went back to drinking 2 or 3 quarts of Dewar's a day. I mean, it was straight
Fucking
on alcohol.
Dewar's.
And he had wet brain. In fact, they hired a psychiatrist to make sure he wouldn't blab to the press about what he did know. The psychiatrist had to sign all these do not disclose documents, and he would take his Mexican ranch hands in the morning and have a cabinet meeting thinking he was still in the Oval Office.
That's incredible.
Absolutely documented.
That is
Robert
amazing.
Caro talks about it. I mean,
That is amazing.
yeah, no, he was way gone. He was, I mean,
Holy
when
shit.
he died, he was listening to Bridge Over Troubled Water by Simon and Garfunkel on a record player on repeat over and over again, singing along drunk to Bridge Over Troubled Water, has the heart attack. And when the Secret Service came in, when the Secret Service came in, the song was still playing, and he was dead on the floor.
Dead on arrival. R.I.P. Jumbo.
I mean, Art Garfunkel's vocals on Bridge Over Troubled Water, I would say one of the top 10 vocal performances of all time, hands down.
It could very well be. I mean, they sold a lot of records. I mean,
he's going back out on the road, Paul Simon. I want to try and get a ticket. He's going to be playing in Boston in April.
Wow.
Or June. Yeah. I mean, he's like 84, 85 this year. So this is probably it.
Wow. Remember, didn't he go out with Edie Brickell at one point?
Yeah, they're married. I think they're married.
Oh, they're still married. Okay, right. Okay.
Yeah, they live in Connecticut, Mike, right?
Maybe.
What, Mark? What do you make of Billy Solesti's grandson's tape there that he just came out with?
Well, like he said himself, I've been trying to shop this for 8 years. I mean, that statement alone is indicative of a guy who's up to something. You know, I said on the episode we did, I think it's Bar McClellan, who was trying to sell that book at the time, the same Blood, Money, Power.
Right,
I think it's Bar McClellan, and I put up both voices on our channel as a tease. Yeah, I put up McClellan's voice, and it sounds kind of like his Cliff Carter. Cliff Carter was way too smart, way too hip, way too sharp to go with a convict who just got out of prison 5 minutes ago and make a tape that he got Mac Wallace to kill the president. That's insane. In theory, it's insane.
Yeah.
If you drill down to underneath those facts, Cliff Carter was dead within a month of the date of that, surprisingly. So the dates are lined up by the kid just enough to keep Cliff Carter alive on the earth.
Right.
And then the kid says that he sent him to Don Trump Jr. He sent him to Don Sr. He sent him to what's his name, the Attorney General Paxton of Texas. No, and all these other people. Nobody's ever acknowledged receiving these tapes, by the way. And he said, I've been trying to get people to listen to. I've been shopping these tapes, to use his words, for 8 years.
Well, let me tell you, Mark, we got them on InfoWars. We're going to air them in the 19-hour episode of InfoWars, folks. This is big stuff, folks. We have a Mac Wallace smudge here, folks. Okay, we literally have a Mac. Google it, Mac Wallace smudge, folks.
You know, if you take these pills right here, Mac Wallace took these pills the night before he shot Kennedy. These pills work. They've got Ethereum in there. They've got Lycopene in there. Lycopa.
Mark, if you take these anti-New World Order red pill, dick pills, you'll be as big as Lyndon Johnson. I guarantee it, folks. Infowars.com.
One time I was a guest on the show. It was really exciting.
Nice. Yeah, Alex is fun. I thought that was interesting. Your Untold Stories episode about Mac Wallace is absolutely
I mean, Mac Wallace is a fascinating character, bro.
He really is.
Who is this guy? I mean, Jesus. And somebody contacted me that the photo of the guy coming out of the Soviet embassy, the guy who is the hulking giant Lee Harvey Oswald, was actually a lineman who played with Mac Wallace at Wilson High School.
No shit.
Yeah, and I forget the guy's name, but this guy contacted me and said there were two brothers. They were all stars, and keep in mind that Wallace was an all-pro quarterback in high school and had a future in football. He hurt his back in the Navy, slid down a ladder and broke his back, and he had problems after that. But he didn't have a problem killing that guy at the golf store.
Yeah. So do you think maybe J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI, ended up with whatever that blackmail was at where Johnson's sister worked at that brothel outside of D.C. that you spoke about?
The Bobby Baker motel.
Baker ran. Obviously, that's compromise and blackmail. They were recording whoever was in there.
Oh, yeah. No, of course. And they do the same thing today.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I tell people when I reference that, when they ask about Epstein and thinking it's a new thing. And I'm like, dude,
oh my God.
You don't even know about
Bobby Baker. That scandal was being fed. The information from that was being fed by RFK Jr.'s father, the Attorney General of the United States, to Life magazine. Life magazine actually published an edition that was coming out November 22nd, 1963, about the Baker scandal, with LBJ going to jail in their story. They had to trash that entire issue, not because they didn't want to publish it, but because of the assassination. They had to reprint and come up with an entire new issue and replace it by the assassination. But that issue itself, which Life magazine has said they published like 33,000 of them, never released them, destroyed them all. According to Life magazine, they destroyed them because they went into the JFK assassination Life magazine edition. But in there, he's going to jail, and that's where RFK is sending him. Mm-hmm. RFK is the leaker of all of the crimes of LBJ to the media because of their arch nemesis relationship. I mean, how many times did LBJ said, "I'm going to slit his throat if it's the last thing I do," gesturing with his finger? You know, you could see that. You show that to enough people, and people get the message after a while.
Yeah, well, right, because they go back to when RFK was doing those committees, and Lyndon Johnson, said, "Oh, you're the son of that Nazi lover, Joseph Kennedy." Yeah, that appeaser and all that.
Yeah. So that kind of started it.
So the suggestion that they were going to drop him from the ticket is more than proper.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you get it, I have an LBJ script that we're digitizing right now. It's going to be the next AI LBJ miniseries script that I did, and when you get into that, you will see that what happens is that RFK is not in the room when the offer comes down from JFK. JFK also here in LA, right over here at this hotel here after the speech at the Coliseum. Two FBI agents visit JFK that night, and they've got a file and photos with him with girls, and they're told to tell him that the director of the FBI would appreciate you selecting Mr. Johnson as your VP candidate. So he says, okay. And he contacts LBJ, who's about 4 floors below. And through the cutouts of different people there, he goes down and eventually offers him the nomination as VP. RFK is not there. And when he comes back, he goes berserk. He goes absolutely berserk. And he goes downstairs to LBJ, and he demands that LBJ refuse to accept the nomination of Vice President of the United States by the presidential nominee of the Democratic Party. And he just goes, "Oh, come on, Bobby. Your own brother told me that. I'm not going to give up. Go talk to your own brother, Bobby." And he goes into this whole song and dance. And he's right, LBJ. I mean, here's the brother coming down, telling him not to accept the nomination. His own brother asked him to be VP.
That's crazy. Do you think there's some files and stuff that even the Kennedy family has not wanted to come out because it's tangent?
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
What? It's something that could be embarrassing. Or I'm very interested in Jackie Kennedy's, I think, 1964 interviews with William Manchester.
Absolutely. I mean, the Manchester interviews, which I believe Caroline Kennedy now physically has, are a window into her thinking. That chapter, which is essentially the interview of Jackie Kennedy by her hand-picked author, William Manchester, and when it comes out in galley form, her and RFK go to federal court to have it blocked in a lawsuit against William Manchester of New Hampshire. And it's put into the vault. He agrees not to publish it. He takes it out of the book, and it goes into the vault. When he dies, his son takes it out, and everybody was expecting his son to publish it. And then he pulls the chicken switch, and he says, "I can't publish this." And it's a chapter that I believe the CIA always has book chapters. They always have full books. They always have PDFs in a lot of these files, and I'm sure they have that chapter in their files. Whether that's in there, that would be great. Because in that interview, is her alleging that her belief is that LBJ was involved in the murder of her husband. She says in the hotel in Fort Worth that she never heard a louder fight in her life the night before the assassination between LBJ and her husband about the seating of John Connolly in the front of that limousine. She said that was the loudest fight I've ever heard my husband ever be in.
Wow.
No kidding. I mean, Connolly always maintained that he was hit by a different bullet, and therefore...
my theory is that none of these people have any gravitas in talking about this subject. I mean, LBJ later on said, I think it was a conspiracy. They're all too compromised to take them seriously, in my humble opinion, about what they personally say about it.
Do you have more information, Mark, about Eugene Hill Brading, a.k.a. Jim Brading, in L.A. when Bobby Kennedy's killed? Because I know he's the only person who's at both sites, right, of both assassinations.
I know that Pena and Hernandez interviewed him. I know where he was in Beverly Hills. I know they brought him in for questioning.
Okay.
That's all. I mean, other than what is out there already, I mean, I'm sure Pena and Hernandez knew a lot more than they publicly released.
That's all that's really out there publicly, is that he was taken in after Bobby was killed.
Yeah. I mean, the stuff in Dallas, you guys are aware. He had the phony driver's license, and he met with Hunt's son the night before, and Ruby, and that's all been fairly well documented. But he was from here anyway, so I mean, he would have been here. I mean, he was a serial marrier, gold digger guy who married like 10 women or something.
That's how he got his bones, right, Mark?
That's how he made his bones.
That's how he gets his bones, Hundley. That's a Groubert impression.
Did I say that?
Yeah, we say that to each other now. That's a Groubertism that we picked up that we absolutely love.
That's funny.
This is how he gets his bones, Hundley.
That's funny.
So what do you think could potentially come out with respect to the RFK assassination? Because I know
that's what I'm more interested in. Yeah, I'm much more interested in that because that's a justice. And that's under the purview of Kash Patel at this point. Because,
amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, if he could get in there and get those, Katie barred the door because I don't know what's in there. And that's like a gold mine of stuff,
Yeah, because
that's how I met RFK Jr. We were both involved in the parole of Sirhan, and I kind of got him off myself, because it was more of the same. All of his paroles were like these pontifications of different theories, and I kind of knew how parole worked. And the last thing they wanted to hear is some other theory about the assassination. That's why he never got out. So when I was done with him, and RFK went before me, and then his brother went also. His kid was there, but his kid didn't say anything, Bobby the Third. But the RFK did say stuff, and Sirhan spoke, and I was with his attorneys. And what came out of that was the two judges agreed with me, and that he was in a blackout from having 6 Tom Collinses and doesn't remember what he doesn't remember. And I use the example for themselves when they give parole of a housewife who's in a blackout and kills an entire family driving the wrong way on the 101. She can't express remorse for being in a blackout. And I use that as an example simply to get him paroled. And it worked.
Yeah.
It worked. I didn't want to go into the mind control. They've heard all this shit.
Right,
it's never going to get you out. It's never going to get you out. And they stupidly kept doing it with Pepper and all these other people. And I just talked directly to the judges, and I said, the guy had 6 Tom Collins. He's a tiny little man. He was in a blackout. Whether he did it or not, he shot Paul Schrade, who was a friend of mine. I was there representing Paul Schrade, who was too old to go. So I was there as Paul Schrade's representative. He shot Schrade in the head. All the bullets are accounted for. The autopsy is a perfect autopsy. He can't express remorse for something he doesn't remember from being drunk in a blackout. And that won the day. And they voted to parole him. What happened after that had nothing to do with me. It went to Newsom's office, and then Bobby's sisters said incredibly that Sirhan can get out, get in an Uber in Pasadena where he lives, and go to Malibu and kill them. And Newsom said, that sounds reasonable to me. I mean, he's an 80-year-old man. I'm sure he's going to get in an Uber and kill the Kennedy sisters. And he, for the first time, overrode his own hand-picked parole board.
Right. So you got to actually spend some time with Sirhan? Like
No. It was all over the Zoom.
Oh, done through Zoom?
Yeah, it was all electronic.
Yeah, we had Paul Schrade on not too long before he passed away. I think for probably one of his last interviews. And are you still working on a project about him, or that?
Yeah,
you shot a lot of footage.
Yeah, we shot a lot of footage. Eventually I'll get an editor to cut it down and do something on Paul Schrade. But yeah, we live pretty close by, and I'd go over there and shoot some footage about his life and also the assassination. Also, he thought RFK Jr., by the way, was batshit crazy, in case you're wondering.
Oh, he did? Well, he
thought he was completely insane.
He's the one who convinced him to look at the case, though, right?
I know, but I said, what do you make of RFK Jr.? And he said he's totally insane. He's been insane his whole life.
Well, if you saw your uncle and your father gunned down, you're going to have
right.
know.
I didn't even pursue it, but I'm saying, Schrade asked me to represent him at the parole hearing, and that's why I got in there. And I had a plan because I had done this before, but I had a plan to get him out, at least get him paroled. And I thought from there, you could go to have another trial. When the CNN audio tape came out of the Polish 12 shots, the case was alive again because CNN gave it a lot of veracity, and the Attorney General of the state of California refused to reopen the case, despite the audio tape of the 12 bullets, and her name was Kamala Harris.
Yep. Kamala, she's a terrible person, Mark. She's an awful lady, and I'm so glad I beat her. I beat her so bad. I beat her so big.
As I predicted in July, I'm going to end up with her as governor, and I'm sticking with that prediction.
Oh. You think so?
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, I think Nicole Shanahan's going to try.
I hope she does. I'm rooting for her, but the name recognition, the democratic depth of this one-party state is never going to happen.
Wow.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Machine.
I would go with Shanahan in a heartbeat, of course.
Yeah,
and I
awesome.
think that Rick Grinnell is threatening to run too.
Oh yeah, Grinnell. Yeah, because what did Trump make him? A special envoy or something to the Middle East? It's not really like a.
He's a special envoy to the Kennedy Center, where I think Caroline went in the other day to threaten to remove the Kennedy name. And I urged Trump to change the name to the Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Arts.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah, Mark. I'm going to lobby for that too with all the people.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I'm plugged into the Kennedy world. I love that.
Yeah, because you just call it the Kennedy Arts Center, but it's his father's name's on the Justice Department.
We're going to call it the Junior Center for the Arts, right? That sounds good? Does that sound good, Junior? It sounds good, Mark, right?
Here, give this pen to RFK Jr.
Give this to RFK Jr.
That was a great historical moment.
That was great.
And then the MLK Junior files, and then 9/11 and UFOs.
Yeah, it's never going to end with this fraud. Yeah, 9/11. I said you might as well do the Lincoln conspiracy again, even though it was resolved. As long as you're going in there, bitch. Why don't you add some more conspiracies to it? It'll take 4 years. As Trump's leaving, they'll say, we'll send you a final report as you're leaving, Trump.
So are they trying to do like a new AARB board, or like what do you?
No, not at all. Not at all. It's just a generic task force. They're flying on the government dime on our money to Dealey Plaza to interview. She says she wants to interview surviving members of the Warren Commission. Unfortunately, nobody told her they're all dead.
Yeah.
So that was the first mistake. But they are flying, and they're all going to Dallas to just walk around Dealey Plaza.
Are you serious?
I swear to God. I swear to God.
They can have us do that.
We've already done that. We've been there. I've been there twice. We've already been there.
I recommended Dick Russell and Rex Bradford and Jim DiEugenio as the Twitter files guys to go in there and look at the files. Dick Russell, very close to RFK Jr.
Yeah.
Jim DiEugenio, the top guy in my estimation, and Rex Bradford, who runs the Mary Farrell Foundation. Those guys know documents, the physics of documents.
And John Newman and Jefferson Morley.
Newman, not so much. Military intelligence. Sorry.
Does that scare you, Mark?
Yeah, it scares me. Sorry. Yeah.
And then Morley, I know you said he's kind of a little too deep statey for you.
Too deep statey for me. Washington Post. Look, I worked for the LA Weekly, which is the Village Voice. That's different than the Washington Post. It's a little too deep state for me. And Morley, just obsessed with Joe and Ides. He's got his one-track thing that he's interested in. I mean, God bless him, but I mean
Morley's good. He's damn good.
No, I'm not disputing that. It's a little too deep state for me. He's a little too close to the third rail.
I'd like Oliver Stone to have some kind of ceremonial role in this thing too.
He could. He could if he would get over the hump and stop arguing with me about LBJ.
He needs to be like the Grand Marshal, Mike.
Yeah. The problem with a lot of these people is they can't get their mind around the
theories.
LBJ. And Oliver and I would fight about it. And they're too hypnotized by this Democratic leader who they revere second to FDR.
What are you saying? Stone can't get to the point where it's like, yeah, of course LBJ was involved.
He will only give you the cover up.
Oh.
They won't buckle. He won't buckle.
You just get me reelected, I'll give you your goddamn war.
You know, he will not buckle on being involved on the front end.
Really?
I swear to God, we've had screaming matches over it, and he's starting to move. He was on Valuetainment with
Patrick McDavid.
Patrick McDavid, and he started to say that, you know, maybe LBJ was involved. He only had means, motive, and opportunity. Other than that, he was going to go to federal prison the next day. But
you have LBJ, Mark. You have him there, okay? Then you have him having all these affairs and da. He's in the motorcade. He hears the shots. He ducks down in the back of the car, right? How could he not be involved?
You know, it's so funny. I watch that show every once in a while. I think I'm in a Persian rug store in Beverly Hills. I don't know who these guys are. They're like real estate 3-card Monte dealers or something. I don't know what the fuck. All of a sudden, they're investigating everything on the earth.
It's incredible.
It's incredible. So I look at the followers. I got 80 million followers. I'm lucky to get my 130,000 that I have.
Hey, it's impressive what you and Eric have there, man.
Dude, they've been stepping on us since day one. They've been demonetizing us.
Yeah, well, because you guys are the legit, real, the goods in the weeds research about what actually happened and who was involved.
I mean, they have crushed us so many times. It's just ridiculous.
So, you got any live events coming up that because you guys go?
Yeah, we're going to go to Las Vegas, Nevada, April 12th. We'll probably do Dallas in the fall. You know,
we got to get a meeting with Sununu now here in New Hampshire.
We're going to do a little thing in Dealey Plaza in Dallas in November, but April 12th. We're going to celebrate Robert Barnes's birthday in Las Vegas for a meetup with Viva and Barnes, myself and Eric doing a panel discussion on a lot of JFK stuff live. So that'll be fun.
Oh, that's awesome. That'd be a lot of fun to do a live event sometime.
Yeah, it is. We've done a few of them. It's a lot of fun. We did election night in Boca Raton. We're giving an award to Robert, and it's also his birthday. And then we'll have a panel discussion. It'd be like 100, 150 people roughly. It's in a restaurant.
Oh, that's cool. You have Buell Frazier there signing copies.
Buell Frazier when he worked in Buell Frazier worked his senior year in high school. He worked in a department store, and he specialized in curtain rod shipping. Can't make this up. It's in his memoir. Curtain rod shipping in the department store he worked in Dallas his senior year in high school.
Yeah, because he was even young when he worked at the depository. He was like 19.
Yeah, he's the same. Yeah, he was younger than Oswald by a year or two. Yeah.
What do you make of him adding in that he saw a guy with a rifle outside the You
have to do something to get a book deal. You have to add something new every time. You have to come to the table with your bullshit story, but you have to add something new to the genre. It's like the Secret Service agent with $3.99 on the back of the limousine. You got to come up with something new these days to get a book deal in that JFK arena.
Oh, Paul Landis. You're talking
the Landis fraud. The Landis fraud is silly. Watch Vince Palomara's thing on that, and explain it to you.
Dude, Vince is awesome. Your episodes with Palomara have just been my oxygen lately. With that
nobody even knows what we're talking about. I mean, people
Mike and
watching going, no, I know there are. I'm exaggerating, but I mean, we just get so geeked out, me and him.
It's incredible, dude. It's a language, Mike.
It is weird because you have to know what we're talking about, and we don't have time to explain it because we're rolling. Same thing with Jim DiEugenio. I did the same thing with Jim, and a couple of these guys that we all know the same shit, and so we don't stop and explain it because we're into the conversation itself.
Right.
I mean, that's why when people ask me about Judith Ferry Baker or James Files or Chauncey Holt, I can't be bothered with this stuff, because it just makes me go backwards. I consider them like Holocaust deniers. I can't really waste my time. We're moving forward. Now you want me to explain James Files to you and stop everything?
Larry Baker just got on Piers Morgan.
I told Eric that. I just told Eric that on the phone.
I watched it. It was. So you Lee Harvey Oswald's lover?
Yeah. No, I mean, you got to give it to him. The deep state does never surrender, never give up, just keep plugging away. There's some cat in Peru who books all these people. They were trying to book them on my show. He would call me from Peru, some sketchy dude, and he books Patrick Bet-David's show. And he was trying to get Frazier on my show because he had the book coming out, And there was only one catch. They didn't want me on the show.
What, on your show?
On my own show. He just wanted to do Hunley. Yeah.
Get bent.
Yeah.
I would love to interview Frazier. I guess he just had a pretty major health scare last year, but he's recovering. And I did dig up an email address and did a request, but I've never heard back. So, it's interesting. He was friends with Jim LaVille.
Yeah.
Frazier was.
Yeah. He was friends with a lot of people. I mean, when because his sister, Lenny Mae Randall, it really vouches for him with the curtain rod story. But if you look at the mother's 302, or you look at the manager of the building's 302, Texas School Book Depository, both of their 302s say that Oswald had nothing in his hands. Lenny Mae Randall and Frazier's own mother looks out the kitchen window and says his hands are empty. There's no curtain rods in her 302. So Lenny Mae Randall is the only one who can vouch for the story that the Dallas detective, who was also in The Thin Blue Line, by the way, the Errol Morris film, the same detective who frames the guy in the Thin Blue Line story. If you want to know how professional framers work, watch that episode.
Was that Wade or?
No, it's not Wade. It's
Westbrook.
No, it's not Westbrook. I forget if I
Westbrook's
heard it.
pretty shady though, Mark, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he becomes CIA later and gets involved in operations in Vietnam. But the guy who does this framing, Oswald carrying the curtain rods is created because they get the bio of Buell Wesley Frazier and threaten him with the electric chair. He's lie detected twice. He's being driven home by the Dallas police, and they get a call over to bring him back. He's shitting in his pants. They're threatening to put him in the electric chair. He is technically arrested, as the only other man in the killing of Kennedy is Frazier. And Frazier, does their bidding by saying that he had this package, and then they're off to the races. They debate the size of the package, whatever, but they needed somebody to verify Frazier's bullshit story, and that's where Lenny Mae Randall comes in, his sister.
Now, wasn't she friends with Ruth Payne? Isn't that kind of how?
Yeah, they live next door. Yeah,
yeah, ostensibly how Ruth Payne, helped Lee Harvey Oswald get the gig at the depository, even though she's aware of other jobs that would pay more, and she really pushes for that job.
Yeah, I think Frazier was up on the roof, actually, because he goes into the basement to eat lunch, and nobody knows why he goes into the basement to eat lunch. That was kind of weird. And then I think somehow he made his way to the roof where they find this 303 British Enfield up there, and they bring it down, and that's been fairly well documented. Robert Groden was on, and we talked about that film, which is on one of his DVD series. And surprisingly, they also go to Frazier's house and retrieve a 303 British Enfield and tons of ammo, the exact same weapon that they claim to have found on the rooftop of the Texas School Book Depository. I think that shot that got Connolly was straight down from the roof, and I think that might have been Frazier up there doing that.
Really? You think he may have been one of the shooters?
Yeah, absolutely. He went to the rifle range every week in Dallas. Oh. He had tons of ammo. He had a 303 British Enfield seized by Dallas police out of his house with the ammo, and that's why they scared the shit out of him. He was the next Oswald. In other words, he was a guy up there with a rifle on the roof, and that rifle was the 303 British Enfield. I think there's only one. I think they conflated what they found on the roof with what they claimed to have found in his house.
Wow. Yeah, that was going to actually be my next question, because it's with Kennedy assassination buffs, we always like to compare notes and say who we theorize who the triggermen could be. So you think Frazier's one of them?
Yeah.
And then
I've always thought that, and I think that Connolly shot. If you look at the Connolly shot, which I've talked to Jim about, and I've talked to Groden about it, and people, we tend to agree that shot is almost straight down. It comes in the back of Connolly, comes out below his ribs, and goes straight down into his wrist and thigh. There's no place on the earth that you can be other than on that rooftop shooting straight down by the Hurt sign, and that's kind of where they found the rifle. And the same thing is true of the windshield shot. If you go over to the far left of the overpass, and I walk it through, I do an episode where I walk through Dallas, and you go over there and you line up that shot, it goes right through the windshield into his throat. And if you're over there, there's a federal building over there, by the way. And if you go over by that parking lot, it curves, and there's a curve and a hump. The people standing in the middle of the overpass cannot see the ends of the overpass, if that makes any sense to you, because it's curved. It's curved. So people say, well, everybody would have seen them. Not if you go up there. I urge people to go
There's
up
bushes.
there.
Yeah.
Bushes, it's a great vantage point for that throat shot.
The last time,
in fact, it's the only vantage point.
Yeah, the last time we went to Dealey Plaza, remember I spent a lot of time over there?
Yeah, I think it was after watching one of Mark's episodes
that Mark's talking about.
Yeah, it's like when you go to Dealey Plaza, you could spend all day going in all these different places, and we went where SM Holland was on the overpass, and to look at his vantage point of the fence. And we didn't walk over to Daltex though, but there was probably a shooter
the
in
Daltex building has been altered. It's now co-ops in there. There's like a gift store downstairs, but you can look at the second floor window and realize what a vantage point that is straight on, into the back. Now the back shot, goes in only 3/4 of an inch, a half an inch, the Daltex window shot. So that must have been with a suppressor and undercranked and understuffed, and because it doesn't traverse. I mean, the guy who traverses it for us famously is Gerald Ford, who does it for the good of the American people, quote unquote, altering the autopsy photo.
And that's where you think Hale Brading is a spotter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably a spotter. And do you have a theory on who the rifleman was?
I don't. I know Weatherford was up on the roof of the criminal courts building because he was up there as a sniper protector on the job. And the kid who grabbed his rifle to take it down said the barrel was hot. And then on his deathbed, he said, "I've killed a lot of fucking people, you piece of shit." He went on and on about on his deathbed how many people he killed. Weatherford, that is, from the sheriff's department. And that's the criminal courts building. In theory, I guess, that could be a shot in the back. I'm not really sure, but the Daltex building is kind of a straight on low angle shot that's pretty clean, and if you go over there and when it was a Daltex building, that was a closet with a window. I mean, it's a perfect vantage point. It's a broom closet.
Was it Reiner, Mike, the director who did his series on JFK, didn't he put Akacia Smith as one of the shooters?
I think so.
I don't know. He's still in rehab, unfortunately for him.
Reiner is?
Yeah, he had to.
Dude, his TDS.
He had to dismantle his account. He had turned his account over to the CIA, his social media accounts, like Moby did. Moby famously and stupidly announced it on a radio show that he was turning over his social media accounts to the deep state to go after Trump. That's what Rob Reiner did. Rob Reiner did a film last year called God and Country, an anti-Christian, anti-Trump film documentary, and they traced the money back to USAID the other day.
Shocker.
Yeah,
unbelievable. And then
I know
the other rifle too that's discussed a little bit more is the German Mauser, and the police officer who used to work or manage a hunting sports store.
Seymour Weitzman, yeah. Happened to be a Jew, by the way.
Okay, yeah.
I love the Jewish people.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
What's the Yiddish word of the day? We're
it's Shmegegi. It's Shmegegi.
Shmegegi Hale Brading.
We're kvetching. We're kvetching.
Seymour Weitzman finds the German Mauser. The funny thing about the German Mauser is that for 2 nights, possibly 3, I know it's 2, that Walter Cronkite mentions the German Mauser in the opening of the CBS Evening News.
And I think whoever was one of the shooters in the depository did actually use Oswald's gun or a Mannlicher Carcano for at least one of the shots. What do you think about that idea?
I think they brought it in at some point and they then brought it out. I think they brought it out. I don't even think it was
with
fired.
the bone-in chicken sandwich.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the clip is missing, and then the clip is mysteriously found weeks later, by the way, to the Carcano, the M1 type Garand clip that goes in the bottom of it, comes out the bottom of it when it's empty. There was no clip found, and that particular rifle, when you're out of bullets, the clip pops out. And it would have been laying there next to the 3 shells, but there was no clip.
Oh, wow.
They don't realize they don't have a clip until weeks later, and they go, "Holy fuck, we got to get a clip!" And mysteriously, a clip appears and now goes back in the gun into the Titanic.
And then the guy at the store who said we wouldn't have bolted in the scope because it would have come already pre-drilled, right?
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing about the gun is crazy. I mean, I was on Wikipedia about 6-7 years ago, and there was a raging debate about the gun that's in the Smithsonian, the Oswald rifle. And it's, I think 6 inches shorter. It's not the same rifle. It's got different swivel mounts on it, whatever. But anyway, so there's going back and forth on Wikipedia. And finally, they closed the Wikipedia editing, stopping any future edits. So I looked up the longitude and latitude of the last edit, and it took me to Langley, Virginia.
Okay.
The final edit on the Wikipedia for the rifle.
How about that Bustamante guy who goes on the shows to defend? Have you seen him? He's got the big sideshow bob hair. He used to be in the CIA.
He was on that episode that Barry Baker was on. He was on that panel before.
I don't know who that is. It's just another. I mean, look, this is a full-time job for them.
Yeah.
That's why I can't align myself with spooks, because I don't know who's working, who's not working.
Yeah. So when you said, Mark, when you and Oliver were shopping that script, who were the spooks that flew out?
Who were the spooks that flew out?
Yeah, that came out, or you said you saw. You said people came out, spooks came out.
My favorite one was we went to National Geographic, which is Spook Central. We went into a conference room, and there was nobody in there. And I was with Thomas Jane, who the Punisher, who was on board to play General Walker. Oh yeah, no, he lived Walker. He became Walker. By the end of the show, by the end of this, he knew everything about General Walker. And I think he was turning gay just to be Walker. But we went into a room. There was nobody in there. And it was kind of like Joe Pesci and Goodfellas. We thought we were going to get whacked. We go into this conference room, and there's just a speaker, one of those spider-like speakerphones on the table, and it's on. And a guy comes in, a kid from England, who's like 20, and he says, I'm Gerard Butler, or whatever his name is. And we're going, where's everybody? He goes, well, this is who we are. And we realized that we're being eavesdropped by this speakerphone. And Tom goes crazy, starts screaming into it, yelling, we know you're there. Come on out. And we thought they were in other offices. The whole floor was empty. When we went to Nat Geo, the entire floor, there was nobody in the cubicles. There was nobody in this office, this boardroom. And this kid comes in out of nowhere saying he represents Nat Geo. That was one spooky event. I mean, there were others.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Wow.
Maybe the next project we could pitch is like a reality TV version of a spooky house, and it's just all about the Paynes and the Oswalds living in that small house together. That's a house full of spooks in some way or another.
Yeah, I mean, the Paynes are probably the put it this way, both Tucker Carlson's father and Ruth Payne's father both worked at USAID.
Yeah, and didn't Tucker Carlson's father, was he involved in Air America or something, or
Voice of America?
Voice of America,
yeah.
But it's interesting seeing Tucker Carlson, though, what he's been saying and how about Mike Pompeo and about the assassination. Do you think his turn is legit, or?
I think it is. But the limited hangout is the key. I mean, you can't be perceived as legit unless you limited the hangout to make you legit. In other words, Tucker has to do that for you in New Hampshire to say, hey, he's talking about Pompeo, he's talking about this, he's got to be legit. You have to put something out there. I think that my newest example is this guy, Michael Schellenberger, who goes from being, the leading anti-nuclear guy in the world to the biggest pro-nuclear guy in the world, to run for governor of California, to be on the Twitter files, the UFO thing now. He doesn't even know what he's talking about. And this is how you get people into that space, by doing this. I mean, you have to put them in that space, and you have to give them information that's legit for people to take them seriously.
Right. Some of it's actually legit.
It's a limited hangout. It's a limited hangout.
Because I wonder if there's anything to what Trump supposedly talking to
Pompeo,
Judge Knapp, about, if you saw what I saw, Mark, you wouldn't release it either. Like, is that just
he kind of discussed it with Rogan, didn't he? At the end of Rogan's show,
he kind of downplayed it, made it seem more benign.
Yeah. So, I don't know what he showed him. So I mean, Look, I mean, he has signed an executive order. It's got to play out. I mean, nobody's done that to get this done, and the proof may be in those files. I mean, I'm assuming those FBI files are J. Edgar Hoover's personal files. I mean, otherwise they would have been destroyed a long time ago.
There's got to be the MLK stuff. Probably some of that the family doesn't want coming out.
No, of course.
Recordings of MLK in hotel rooms all over the country.
Yeah, that's signed by RFK Jr.'s father. I mean,
RFK signed off on it.
Yeah, the Willard Hotel in D.C.
Yep. So
tonight I'm fucking for God.
Wow.
Yeah.
Live from the Willard.
Yeah, live from the Willard. Welcome.
Or what about the letter?
I mean, look, if you get into that committee, people aren't looking at it's a bipartisan committee. You got to look at the other side. I mean, you've got Tlaib on that committee. You've got Presley on that committee. You've got Connolly on that committee. You've got Eleanor Holmes Norton on that committee. This is the oversight committee that Congressman Luna is running. Those people are never going to let that MLK crap come out. That's why they probably tricked her into starting the committee so they could get to that information.
Wow. Yeah, I am real interested to see where that goes and what actually happens. And I just hope could there be some competent people who are some staffers who are in the,
I mean, there were during the House Assassination Committee. Lopez was pretty competent. There were some true believers who went the extra mile, but there were also, I mean, I'll just tell you this. I mean, probably a good example. I mean, in the Watergate thing, when I was doing the E. Howard Hunt story, E. Howard Hunt, they decide to undermine JFK by going into the National Archives with phony documents, and he writes phony documents to bring into the National Archives that JFK authorized the assassination of the DM brothers. So for people who believe that all those documents are real that are in there, only look at the E. Howard Hunt story to possibly think that not all of them are real. Hunt later puts them in his White House safe. That leads to L. Patrick Gray, who is getting confirmed like Kash Patel. The same week that L. Patrick Gray is being confirmed, he is given a folder of files to destroy, which he burns in his fireplace. And during that hearing, he reveals that he destroyed these files that were in Hunt's safe. And they said, who gave you those files? Who gave you that order? And he said, the attorney for the president, John Dean. And that launches John Dean into his entire spin operation, realizing that he's now committed a felony. And this is easily traced back to John Dean. And that's why John Dean goes crazy with his entire operation to blame everyone around him except himself, because John Dean is caught. And the reason John Dean gives those files to L. Patrick Gray to destroy is he doesn't want to destroy them. He has the FBI director who is been nominated by Nixon, destroy them in his fireplace. And what's in there that Dean's worried about? Well, he's worried about the photos of Mo Dean at the DNC headquarters that are being brought out from the hooker scandal up at DNC.
Wow.
So it depends.
Dude.
They don't like to destroy files is the moral of this story, because you can get caught as the file destroyer, and that is a felony. So they don't, that's why I'm saying that these 1,400 whatever the amount is at the FBI headquarters.
The 2,400, yeah.
The 2,400, that's why they may be the personal files of J. Edgar Hoover that nobody had the chutzpah to destroy because they were so real and valuable and historical. You don't want to be the guy caught destroying J. Edgar Hoover's personal files.
Right, the tripwire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, wow. not even Leonardo DiCaprio could make J. Edgar Hoover likable.
You got to blame Clint Eastwood for that mess. I mean, I don't know what was going on there.
They had the Campbell playing Clyde Tolson there. I mean, that was incredible.
Yeah, and you did your E. Howard Hunt episode was great too that you and Hundley did, and yeah, I mean, do you put any credence into I was a bench warmer for the big event? His death?
No, I think his kid at that time, and I hate to say it, but he was addicted to heroin, needed the money, he was broke, and kept hawking his dad to do these tapes and to make a book deal out of it. I mean, I can't ignore that. I can't ignore that and say, yes, this is death. First of all, he didn't die right away. He lived for a long time after that, right?
Yeah.
So, and then the kid, he's got his motivation. He's got his motivation.
Yeah.
What a life he had. I mean, having his mother die in that plane crash, and then
it's crazy. I mean, it's a crazy life.
Yeah, because E. Howard Hunt, he names Bill Harvey.
Yeah,
and
he's got He's got names that make a story. He's a great storyteller, bro.
Yeah,
I read all of it. I mean, he gets a Guggenheim Fellowship or whatever he got back in the day. I mean, the guy was a fantastic writer. If you read any of his novels,
yeah.
I mean, so for him to make up a story, it's it's second nature.
Yeah, it just comes naturally.
Comes pretty naturally, and you could see he's reluctant to do it, And I don't think he's reluctant to blame somebody from the opposition party, like LBJ. So there is that, but the motivation of the kids is what bothers me.
I think with the files, though, Mark, everyone's saying, is there going to be something big? Is it just going to be, nothing to it or whatever? And there's narratives being spun. I think really what it is it's the fact that the government knows that the researchers know more than they do. And, and that's.
I cited that example a couple of weeks ago, but there's a redacted file on E. Howard Hunt where they've got his name blocked out and his address, and then right below it just says the famous novelist who writes spy novels all the time said blah 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 blah. Yeah. So they redact names, but it's revealed by their own stupidity further on down in the document if you know what you're looking for.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I mean, I would just like to see, if anything, the unredacted documents of the documents we already have.
Yeah.
At a minimum, just unredact whatever the hell is already out there.
Right. Not like 14 generations of photocopies where you can't even read it and just totally blotted out stuff.
Yeah.
And so do you think we'll get that, though? Do you think we'll see?
I don't know what we're going to get. I'll be honest with you. I was hoping if the FBI files are involved with MLK or RFK, that would be new, because there's very little out there in that world. And I've said that you just have to take the files and put them on the National Archives website, and we'll do the rest. I don't know what other portal they're thinking of, but he doesn't have an archivist right now. So I what's that?
They fired that person.
Yeah, that's the Mar-a-Lago archivist, and it's a confirmation seat. So whoever the person is has to get confirmed by the Senate. And I think we're months away from release unless there's an archivist there putting out the files in a folder on the portal.
I like the notion that someone from the Trump administration said these might just end up on X one day.
That'd be a trip.
Remember, Taibbi went in there with Barry Weiss and Schellenberger. They went into the building itself. And what I'm saying is these three guys should be allowed into the National Archives and go through those files and put them physically in the portal.
Right.
That's my wet dream before this thing happened with Luna. I don't want to do it. I'm too fat and lazy. I'm living in LA. But DiEugenio could get off his fat ass. He likes doing this shit. And go down there with Dick Russell, who apparently loves RFK Jr., and Rex Bradford, who loves documents because of the Mary Farrell Foundation. That would be three guys that I really trust.
Yeah, because there are some researchers who were a little skeptical of Mary Farrell. Are you familiar with that? Like her being a gatekeeper or her...
Well, put it this way. Somehow Morley has now wormed his way in as vice president.
Yeah. We had Morley on.
Yeah. Did he talk about Joe and Ides?
Yeah. He didn't want to talk, though, about the military, the spook who took the photos of the bus in the Texas theater. And he also dismissed what I had to say about Colin's radio.
Colin's radio is quite real. I was talking about it the other day, and it goes all the way down to Australia. Because keep in mind, Australia was big in submarine defense back then during that time period, and they needed the radio system, the high-tech radio system set up by Colin's radio through Admiral Bruton. And Bruton was a friend of de Mohrenschildt's. And they kept going over for these pool parties at Bruton's house, which nobody finds to be bizarre, except me, apparently.
Was it Oswald at one of the pool parties, supposedly?
Yeah, he was.
Well, so the thing about Colin's radio, though, Mark, so a witness saw somebody in a car kind of parked who looked a lot like Lee Harvey Oswald and had the wherewithal to write down the license plate.
Right.
And then that license plate traces back to the best friend of J.D. Tippit.
That I don't know. Once you get into that Tippit world, it gets a little murky. for me personally. It gets a little murky, but we do know that the second husband of Maureen Oswald worked for Colin's Radio.
Porter.
Yeah, who just passed away, I think, in October.
Yeah, that's right.
He worked for Colin's Radio, and I think he was a handler of Marina. He was the next handler. He was the one who took her on, smacked her around. She gets provocative. She's trying to get away from him. She's banging James Martin. She's banging everybody in Texas.
He showed up on a horse.
He showed up on a horse out of the blue. I mean, give me a break. It's like, might as well have been Fabio on that horse with his hair, blowing in the breeze. He's a race car driver with no income whatsoever. Somehow he's a carpenter, Colin's Radio. I mean, it's too much.
Yeah, I watched the movie with the actress from England there playing Marina from the early 90s. I think you talked about it in one of the episodes. It's not bad, except that it's got nowhere to go because there's too many gaps in it. Frank Whaley plays Oswald in that. Yeah, he also had a small part in JFK as one of the Oswald imposters. I agree. For an after-school TV special, I thought it was pretty good.
I know. I thought so, too.
And then I just watched for the first time Executive Decision.
Executive Action.
Oh, Executive
Action, yeah. It's all right.
It's a little cheesy.
It's a little cheesy. Mark Lane co-wrote it.
Yeah, it's got. There's a cheese element.
Yeah.
And one of the last things I want to ask you about, I caught this in one of your episodes. The hotel from the night before that had like the weird awnings or the weird railings, and someone was going to take a rifle shot at the motorcade if Kennedy made it through Dealey alive.
Oh, you're talking about the trademark. The trademark itself had catwalks all through it. The huge trademark, and that's why John Connolly fought so hard to get the speech at the trademark versus the women's building, where you could literally, in the women's building, you could drive the limo right into the building, and that's why the Secret Service wanted it. Yeah. Connolly, with Bruno, who was the advance man for the Kennedy clan for years. Bruno wrote a book called Advance Man, and he got into a fight with Connolly, and Connolly picked up the phone and allegedly called Kenny O'Donnell and was having a conversation with Kenny O'Donnell. And when Bruno got back to the White House, there was no log of this call. He had made it up, Connolly, on the spot. Realized the phone call during lunch with Bruno. That's how much he wanted to get into the trademark. The trademark was unprotectable. Secret Service said it was unprotectable. They all voted for the women's building, which was further to the east. And Connolly was obsessed with this building, and it was undefensible because it had catwalks all through the upper regions of it. And if you want to see a replica of it, see the parallax view at the end with Warren Beatty. That is a replication. That scene is a replication of what would have or could have happened at the trademark.
That movie is frightening.
Yeah,
it's a scary movie.
And don't forget, there's the barbecue at the LBJ Ranch. If everybody gets out alive, they've got to go to the barbecue the next day in the LBJ Ranch, and apparently there were shooters there waiting if Daley Plaza had failed.
Wow. Well, that would be a thread for another show. I want to hear more. I've never heard about that before. I want to hear all about that. Yeah. Well, we're coming up on the 90 minutes mark, and
men, it's been, to quote my old friend Kinky Friedman, a financial pleasure. It's great to be here with you guys. I hope it works out. You were born as Siamese twins. You've separated now. You look great. I know you're not fully functioning on either side of you, but to be separate brothers at this point in your lives, it's got to be a mitzvah. I prayed for it. You, Jackman, obviously, your uncle, has been working with you on the biopic of Siamese Me, the Jackman story, which I strongly support. We may have to invest some money into it, but I think you guys do a good thing here, wherever the hell you are. And the next time I am at, is there a mall up there, like a mall in North Conway? There used to be a shopping mall of some sort.
Probably an outlet or something. Yeah.
It was the outlets. Yeah, it was like an outlet. Yeah, that's what it was. Next time I'm up at one of the outlets, I'd like to stop by and buy you guys a coat.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
That's the least I can do, because it's so hot here. I can't tell you. I'm sweating. I'm schwitzing already.
Well, hang out with us for a minute after I end the live stream here. But ladies and gentlemen, that's Mark Groubert. He's one half of America's Untold Stories. I have all the links. I have all of Mark's links below there in the description. Subscribe to that YouTube channel if you're interested in the JFK case, other amazing historical stories, and just anecdotes that you wouldn't even believe where you pull them from, Mark. So it's fascinating stuff, and I appreciate you coming on the show. And everybody listening, please hit the subscribe button. And if you want to support this show, go to patreon.com/Jackman Radio, and we will see you again soon. Have a good one.
All right.